What is the big secret of your hometown? I don't know if it's considered an especially dark secret, but in the county I lived in from the ages of 10 through 18, we had a soldier die under some extremely questionable circumstances. They said he was inebriated or experiencing some kind of mental distress and raided a plant nursery. They claimed he was attacked by wasps and ran. He called 911 several times and claimed that someone was chasing him and was trying to kidnap him. In the last call to the emergency services, he said everything was fine suddenly. Just 14 or 15 minutes later, he was struck by a woman who stopped and called 911. He was run over 2 more times and then died. The autopsy showed no signs of bee or wasp stings. The connection to the nursery is due to the fact that it was just up the road from where he died. The place was ransacked, pizza eaten, and money taken, but his wallet and phone were sitting on the counter undisturbed. However, the family was not okay with that explanation, especially because he had previously texted that there were some problems with the local boys, since the soldier wasn't from this part of the state. So the family had a private investigator look into it. They analyzed the 911 recordings and found several instances of other people talking in the background, though most of it couldn't be made out. Except one. In the 911 call where he told the operator that everything was fine, a male voice could be heard saying, "Tell her." And the nursery? There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no footprints that led back to the soldier, even though his phone and wallet were there in the building. A lot of people, his family included, think he was killed by some of the local guys there after he got into a fight about something. They chased him down and caught him. He was able to run again after the final 911 call and was hit by a driver while trying to get help. And the police in the county covered the entire thing up because the boys involved were connected to the department somehow. Of the 3 drivers, none were charged for hitting or running him over. I think only the first driver even stopped, but it was discovered that one of the drivers was connected to the department either through family or friendship. It's a crazy story, but you can look it up. Just search Austin McGough. I wouldn't be too surprised since there's a lot of shady crap happening in small-town police departments, including covering up unspeakable act offenses that officers commit. I really hope his family gets him justice. Yep. Being a figure with that amount of power in a small isolated town is a real recipe for corruption and unassailable authority figures. There are very few checks and balances out in the middle of butt-frick nowhere. A freshman who was also on the spectrum was known to have a really rough life with his family at home. He was a problem child and got in trouble on purpose, but no one punished him too harshly because of his home life. He was a well-loved kid at school and in the community, actually. One day, just before the holiday break in December, he was really ill, but his mum sent him to school anyway. She locked him out of the house. He decided to try and get into one of the empty houses down the street through the chimney. Now, this kid was the size of a 2nd grader, but he was too big to fit through since chimneys taper down thinner. Mum never answered her phone when the school reported him missing, went a whole day without reporting her kid, and no one knew what happened to him. It was about a month and a half before we knew what actually went down. We all thought he ran away, was alive somewhere, or maybe went to his sister's house. Nope, dead in a chimney. The school organized an entire week of counseling and such. They wore pink for a day and handed out little pink ribbons on pins for him, since his favorite color was pink. Everyone was hit really hard by it. That's how our small town started 2020. It hasn't got any better, as you can see, so it's weird that it's been almost a year now. We had a crazy rich guy from the 16 or 1700s who saw people robbing a grave one night and decided that when he died, he'd be laid to rest in the roof of a barn behind his house. He believed he'd only be dead for 30 years or so and requested that they lock the barn and put the key in his coffin so that he could get out but no one could get back in. He requested that whoever inherited his house, fortune and belongings would have to give them back when he resurrected. He did actually get his wish, but of course he was never resurrected. People stole his bones and his house is a dentist now. This is also the town where that lady went viral going ham in the alcohol aisle in Aldi in 2020. This is more comical than dark. A house burned down in the small town of 600, 1 block from the fire station. It being a volunteer fire department, nobody was actually at the station. They tried to get the pumper truck out, but one of the volunteers had run it into a brick building the week before, and it was still at the shop. We're still undecided whether the house owner burned it down for the insurance. The strange thing was, there was nothing valuable inside. 15 years ago, the local district attorney called his longtime girlfriend and told her he was taking the day off from work and that he loved her. He parked his car in town and went for a stroll past the local shops. He hasn't been seen since. His car was found where he had parked it the next day. He had left his cell phone in the car, but his keys and wallet were missing. Later that year, his laptop, sans its hard drive, was found under a bridge at a nearby river. The hard drive was eventually discovered by a local woman walking along the bank of the river, but it was too damaged to recover any data from it. Interestingly, investigators discovered that someone had done a search on his home computer for how to wreck a hard drive. Did he jump from a local bridge? Did he encounter someone who had prosecuted who did him harm? Or did he escape his life to start a new one? About 10 years ago, a lot of homeless people disappeared, and when the police did the investigation, they found out a guy was kidnapping and eating those people. Police found his hideout and found a half-eaten body and bones from another person. People don't like to talk about it, but everyone knows what happened. Ooh, I have a doozy. Short version, popular kid in high school runs a secret towel fight club and accidentally kills one of their friends in the house of a local politician, who then proceeds to bury the story. Towel fight club is like taping towels over your hands and beating each other up. It's supposed to just be boxing, but it sounds like they got out of control and hardly could call it that. Oh, this is a sad one to me. There was an older couple here who ran a halfway house for troubled kids, who had recently gotten out of juvie. They fostered a few as well. They were loved in the community, wonderful people. One of the kids had an older brother who was a gang member in the nearest big city. During a visit, he snuck his 15-year-old younger brother a piece. The younger bro ended up holding up a local gas station and killed 3 people. One of them was my friend's cousin. The foster parents lost whatever credentials they needed to do what they did. The kids went back into the foster system, and the giant house has been abandoned since 2009. There's a half-submerged submarine from the war in the bay where I live. You can walk out to it when the tide is out. In the late 80s, someone cut open the hatch, one of the only visible parts left sticking out of the sand, then climbed in and was having a look around. The tide came in, and he drowned. If I remember correctly, the whole hatch was filled with cement and then welded shut to stop it happening again. I mean, right up until I read about what happened to the guy, the narrator was just thinking about how cool it would be to go inside a submarine ruin like that. So yeah, I'd probably have drowned too. Sympathize. The town I was raised in wasn't exactly small, but here's the one dark secret I know. My hometown was where lots and lots of sports players had their mansions. And so, of course, their wives and children were out and about in the community a lot. Every single sports player wife in that town was or is heavily addicted to opioids. Every single one. That addiction is obviously an epidemic all over the country, but among the rich wives in that town, it had a 100% infection rate, so to speak. I know because one of my friend's mums was the hairdresser for basically every single one of those wives. I was homeless my senior year of high school, and one of the sports players' wives heard about me from her, and she gifted me an iPhone. That phone was pennies to her, but I still wish I'd expressed my thanks more, because that wife died from taking too much of that particular substance not long after. Sorry if that isn't much of a dark secret, but yeah. Our local pizza place was a known clan hub. Everyone knew it, and still to this day, if you Google the town's name and the initials of the clan, the first thing that pops up is this pizza shop. They had some really gross pizza, too. Back in the 80s, a couple were driving a motorcycle when they were stopped by 3 men, who then committed the unspeakable act on the woman while forcing her husband to watch. Then they unalived both of them. Except the woman played dead after they killed her husband, ran and told the police. The police caught the gang not so long after. That same night that they were caught, a mob of 2,000 people gathered in front of the police department, broke in, and told the sheriff, "You guys did an excellent job, now leave it to us." The mob broke the cell where the 3 men were, beat them up and attached them alive into cars and dragged them for 4 miles to a park in the middle of the city where they set them on fire, still alive, while everyone was clapping and cheering. Almost nobody talks about it now, but there's even a video of it. The mayor of the town that I live just outside of was murdered by his girlfriend a while back. And there was a realtor that was using his company as a front for smuggling smack. Other than that, it's the usual small-town southern crap. When I was growing up, my small town had a spate of murders, about 6 in as many months. This was in the 70s, nothing like it before or after. We have a vineyard hill next to our village. On that hill there's a big wooden cross. Lots of people go there to drink, have a walk or with their dogs, but no one else knows why the cross is there. During the war, a vineyard keeper lived there with his son. His son was recruited and the man was left alone. When the war ended, his son survived and wanted to prank his dad by sneaking up on him at night. But the vineyard keeper saw him and thought he was a robber, so he grabbed his rifle and shot the robber. When he found out it was his son, it broke his heart. He dug a grave on top of the hill for his son and erected a big wooden cross next to the grave. When he was done, he laid next to his son and used the same weapon to end things himself. From that day, no one worked on the vineyards, and there's a big wooden cross on top of the hill. Now you can't even recognize that there's a grave there. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Some high school football players shoved broomsticks up freshman players' butts in the locker rooms after a practice. The coach found out and did nothing about it. The whole town knew, and nothing happened to anyone in the form of punishment. Every game for the rest of the year, the opposing team's fans brought broomsticks to the games. About 40% of my hometown was homeless. No one had jobs, no one could afford any kind of housing situation. Neighbors paid for heat where they could on houses that people were squatting in, and everyone invited everyone else over for dinner every night. We didn't know who was homeless, we just did it. We hired anyone and everyone for odd jobs. A lot of people just lived as they would when they were kids. Keep the fireplace going with the trees you chopped down, gather water by the well and trade, farm, or trap for food. I went to school with a lot of homeless kids. We had, looking back, the most robust school breakfast program I've ever heard of. I thought it was normal for over half the school to show up until I moved to the city. You just gave people the dignity they deserved. No one was shamed if they dropped out at grade 10. We all knew that if they needed the job, they should take it. Looking back, I realize how wild it is. Our town was so poor, and no one was treated any different by me and mine at least. Sure, there were some rich people, but they overwhelmingly went to the other school. And there were no panhandlers, no beggars, nothing like that. I was just told the Buseys were coming over for dinner. Did I like them? No, I kinda think they were jerks. But never did I make them feel uncomfortable, and most just ate, had some tea, and left. And if that doesn't tickle your fancy, a whale washed up on shore one week, and all the guys in the local high school took turns doing the deed with it. All of them. To clarify, the whale part happened after I graduated by a few years. It was a very public thing when it was happening, and no one likes to talk about it since then. I must say that was a really uplifting story of community, solidarity, and a testament to the kindness humanity are capable of when we're in tough situations. Then the last 2 sentences were the most wild right turn, which is hilarious, but did go some way to unraveling all of the good work done up until that point. As a teen in high school, the health teacher got caught being very inappropriate with a student. Everyone magically passed that year, including me, who skipped almost every day. Then a few years ago in another small town, 2 different scandals within the space of 5 years. First one, teachers at a preschool were dosing the children with melatonin at nap time, and the second one, a very well-known and respected funeral home, went under investigation for selling body parts. I've got 3. We have a prison for young delinquents in our town. Back in the 80s, a student escaped and broke into an elderly couple's home. He strangled and did the unspeakable act to the wife in front of her wheelchair-bound husband. He then beat up the old man, but I don't know if that guy died or not. Next one, a young woman was running our high school track and a student went outside and shanked her to death using a metal compass. And finally, in the 80s, a son of a New York Police Department detective shanked a mid-20s woman to death in her driveway over 40 times. There was a huge manhunt for the guy. My parents tell me the rumor was that the woman's husband was gay and having an affair with the man. But there's also a rumor that the man unalived his own wife and that the guy was convicted, was just an easy target based on his mental capacity and reputation. I actually met the guy over the summer during an investigation I was doing. I'm a private investigator. The guy was definitely strange, but then again he was in prison for 20 years. A girl I went to high school with just vanished one day. From day one, everyone was telling the police that her ex had something to do with it. She already had a restraining order because he held a knife to her and threatened to kidnap her, but with no evidence, they couldn't do anything. Over the years, several people went to the police saying that he'd admitted to killing her, but they did nothing. He eventually got in trouble for threatening to kill another girlfriend and actually attacking her and went to prison for 3 years. After prison, he came back to town and eventually asked another ex of his for a ride home from a party. And then she went missing after that night, and they found her car burned, and they arrested him again and he had burns on his hands. A few months later, someone found a set of remains outside of town, and during the recovery they found another set of much older remains. He killed them both, and the failure of our local police department caused the second girl to be murdered. A new police chief's bachelor party was held at the local adult exotic dance club. It was videoed when video was new. The cops broke in looking for the tape, which was also recorded. The new chief lost the job within a month. There were rumors that there was a secret passage from the village's churchyard to the coal cellar on our grounds, which were used by Jews to hide and flee from the Reich. Not sure if that qualifies as dark. Some guy that owned a froyo shop knocked one of his female employees unconscious, and she woke up inside this soundproof room in said yogurt shop, bound up and wearing a diaper. She managed to escape and get the cops called. This one guy, blue collar but running for a local political office, comes home to his wife of 7 years, finds her doing the deed with some guy. He whips out a piece and shoots the guy a few times. The man survives. He finds out that his wife was cheating on him and it wasn't the unspeakable act. Here's where it gets dirty though. So the police want to press charges against him for attempted murder, since they say he knew his wife played around. So the DA comes to him and tells him to stop running for office and withdraw. He does, and the charges magically go away. No crime here, folks. Does anyone remember a few years back when a bunch of people were dying of lung diseases caused by illegal THC vape cartridges? Well, turns out the guy I went to high school with was running one of the biggest THC cartridge operations in the Midwest, if not the entire country. His mum and brother were in on it too and had multiple locations where they were paying people to manufacture, pack, and distribute said cartridges. Maybe not so much dark as wild. When I was in the first grade, a guy called the police from multiple different phones, saying there was an explosive device in each of the schools in the town. 3 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school. And all of these schools were evacuated. Turns out, while the entire police force was split up, he robbed a bank and got away with it. Don't go getting ideas, listeners. Honestly, I'm just glad that the cops prioritized the safety of the students over the money in the banks. It's refreshing. The bank was probably insured against that kind of thing anyway. Hopefully, nobody got hurt. Looking through my hometown's history is a wild ride. About a decade ago, there was a crime spike here. It was really bad because one cartel tried to displace the other. And because we're a sleepy town across the border from the US, we're prime cartel real estate. However, when they weren't tearing each other up in the streets, they would abduct, interrogate, kill, and dispose of the bodies of their rivals until eventually one cartel managed to keep the town. One thing that baffled the authorities was their stealth. They came out of nowhere, struck their target, and vanished into the shadows. That may be possible for a small unit or even a lone agent, but that's unheard of in a cartel. Federal investigations were made and no one was able to find the cartel's HQ. It had to be big because they had weapons, vehicles, metal shops, dormitories, kitchens, and the corpse disposal equipment. They looked everywhere. Nearby ranches, warehouse, junkyards, nothing. Until, that is, they looked where no one thought to look. A few kilometers outside of here is a fully operational state prison that they were using as their HQ. Everyone was in on it, from the inmates to the guards, to the warden, to the governor. People were killed there, burnt to ashes inside steel drums, and the ashes were thrown in a river a few kilometers away. Over 100 people were disposed of this way. Forensic authorities have combed the river, finding small bone fragments and testing their DNA. As of 2016, 9 have been identified. There is a dispute over the governor responsible. At that time, the governor of the state was Humberto Moreira. However, he resigned before finishing his term so he could run for another office, which he lost. Because he resigned, a provisional governor was assigned named Jorge Torres. During this time, there was an absolute media silence regarding the matter, either because of bureaucratic stonewalling, cartel threats, or government payoffs. However, a national magazine called Proceso wrote an article about the crimes being committed in the state, and Moreira ordered all copies of the magazine removed from newsstands there. When the problems in the state started to surface, both governors left the country. Moreira got a scholarship to study in Spain, which no one was able to identify the source of, and he also lived in a chalet that had a monthly rent higher than his salary as a governor. Meanwhile, Torres fled to the US. Moreira managed to transfer the blame of all wrongdoings of his administration onto Torres. Moreira was arrested by the Interpol a few years back, charged with money laundering. Incredible as it may seem, the Spanish authorities handed him over to Mexico, where he's lived as a free man, going as far as to create his own political party. No charges of any crime have ever been brought on him, and he maintains his claim of innocence. Since his return, he's never left the country. To mock his claim, one senator went so far as to invite him to the Super Bowl, with all expenses paid. Moreira, fearing the Interpol, passed on the invitation. The senator tweeted a picture of the empty seat. Meanwhile, Torres was caught in the US and also faced charges of money laundering. He pleaded guilty in the summer of this year. It's worth noting that Torres' testimony gives details as to the cartel's operations during Moreira's administration, including the protection they received and the times, dates, and sums of bribes paid. The Mexican government never included these statements as part of their investigation. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.